I want to take a look at, like I said, the New Orleans Pelicans here, who have now won back-to-back games after snapping a 10-game slide. And just looking, I think, heading into the All-Star break specifically, I think this is obviously going to be a buy team in the short term, where the market obviously has tumbled a little bit too low on them. Brandon Ingram has his legs back now. He was obviously going to be shaky those first couple of games after such a significant period of time out, and dealing with a foot injury is not necessarily something that's easy to come back off in the NBA. So the short-term answer for them is, look to try and buy them in specific spots, I think, more often than not. But the longer-term question now, it's tough to see exactly what the ceiling is for this team this season. I think obviously in future seasons they have all the assets and talent available at their disposal to genuinely be one of the best teams in the Western Conference for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons. But for this season specifically, obviously it's all going to come back on what shape does Zion Williamson come back to the floor on? Is he able to basically pick up from where he left off? If he is, then this starting five is still elite in their own right. They're a plus 10.1 point differential per 100 possessions when these guys are on the floor. Their offensive rating are 120.7 points per 100 possessions, near 58% effective field goal percentage. That starting five we know can basically hold their own against anyone. And I think when it comes to a best of 7 series, a lot of what we are going to be looking for is matchup specific opportunities for them where if things fall in place for them, I think that there's a very realistic chance that this team can in fact make a Western Conference Finals. But if things sort of bottom out per se, then yeah, there's absolutely a chance that this team is a first round exit, unfortunately for them this season. But I don't think that necessarily hinders their future too much. Like I said, they just have so much in the way of assets and talent already on the roster for them to make strides in the right direction in coming seasons. I do think Willie Green's the right guy as well to take them forward with what he already has available to him. So the long-term outlook for me for the Pelicans this season will just be about playing them on a series-to-series basis in the playoffs, depending on who it is they match up with. I think, like I said, there's opportunity for them to make a really good run, depending on what they have in front of them. Specific matchups, like I think Memphis Grizzlies, for example, is a team that they would match up really well with in a best of 7 in those half-court sets. Something where their length and size can cause a lot of issues for the Grizzlies in half court with their defense, and offensively guys like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson can really expose some mismatches, I think, in their favor in scoring the basketball consistently at that end of the floor. So definitely going to be matchup dependent. I don't have any intention of buying futures on the Pelicans right now to win the West, to win their division, to win a championship. But I do think that there is a lot of potential for value to be had with them, just given that they have had to deal with so many injuries for such a large bulk of the season that it's kind of impacted their true market rating. I don't think they're quite the team that was, basically first in the Western Conference before everybody started getting injured. I obviously definitely don't think that they are where they are right now either, and on the fringe of having to deal with a playing situation. It's definitely somewhere in between the two. I still think they're a top 4 team when fully healthy in the West, but that's neither here nor there, I don't think, given the landscape of the Western Conference right now, where everybody is basically capable of beating anybody depending on how the matchups fall once the playoffs do come around. So the one thing I will say again with the Pelicans short term, definitely look to buy on this team. Now that Ingram's back with some minutes under his belt, I think the rotations are looking a little bit sturdier now than what they were during that 10-game losing streak, that's for certain. And they should definitely, I think, be active as well heading into this trade deadline. I do agree they need more shooting around Zion, most definitely. That was my biggest question mark for this team coming into the season, was the lack of shooting on the roster. Outside of Trey Murphy, there's not really anyone you can rely on to consistently score from beyond the arc. CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas take a lot of threes for their positions, but they're not necessarily the catch and shoot snipers you want around guys like Ingram, who can operate in the mid-range, Zion, who can put pressure on the rim. Herb Jones, as good as he is defensively, still is that offensive liability until he can sort of prove himself to be a reliable catch and shoot guy that defenses have to respect on the perimeter. So shooting is the one area I hope that they target in the lead up to this trade deadline, and I think that they will. It doesn't have to be anything necessarily eye-opening. I mean, I can see the Bojan Bogdanovic potential. Obviously, he's going to make any contender a genuine threat with what he brings to the table, but it doesn't have to be of that magnitude either. I think it can just be someone that they can rely on to space the floor consistently, and that they can run out with multiple lineups to give them that extra outside threat. And obviously, when you have that outside threat and you have guys like Ingram and Zion who can operate mid-range and attacking the basket to put pressure on defenses there, then that's when this offense can genuinely take another step forward. So yeah, I think that short term that this team is absolutely a buy-on team. And long term, I think that we will try and target this team specifically in matchup situations. I don't think that buying them to win the West or to win a championship is necessarily the best value in the marketplace right now. Just looking at the landscape of the West and then the flaws that I think still exist on this roster to a certain extent.